division on the floor of the Unicam on a proposal which would make it easier for firefighters diagnosed with cancer to claim workers' comp. Fremont Senator Dave Werdekemper introduced the bill. He spent years as a volunteer firefighter before he was elected. He argues firefighters are required to expose themselves to known carcinogens on the job through the very equipment designed to keep them safe.
But as the gear ages, it releases more carcinogens into the firefighters' bodies. So firefighters are required to wear gear that contains known carcinogens. What more proof does a dying firefighter need to prove this?
Look at the workers.
Opponents of the bill call it the, quote, a mother of all unfunded mandates. In this case, that means the state would require cities and towns to pay for the workers' comp without any plan on how. Already has a process for firefighters to claim workers' comp. North Platte Senator Mike Jacobson says he's against the bill, not because he's against firefighters, but because he claims the current laws work as intended.
And if they can prove that this was cause of their employment as a firefighter, they will be paid out. There's a firefighter in Scottsbluff that had passed away with an untimely death and was awarded $600,000, as I understand it, in a settlement.
Time ran out today before the debate on the bill could wrap. Lawmakers will pick up where they left off tomorrow. Of course, we will first alert you to any updates as they happen.